G'day Rugby League Tragics, it's the Rugby League guy here. I always feel like I want to say, g'day everybody, it's your Uncle Arthur, isn't it, eh? For those of you that are old enough to remember the comedy company. But I'm not Uncle Arthur, I'm Uncle Idiot. Anyway, look, round 5 tips. Let's kick it off tonight, because it's now just ticked past midnight. The Knights versus the Sea Eagles at McDonald Jones Stadium in Newcastle. Look, the Knights are favourites, believe it or not, and I think obviously that's a lot to do with Tommy Trbojevic being out for a month or so. But I have still gone with the Sea Eagles, and I've got them at a 3-point margin over the Knights. The Knights paying $1.77 in the betting, and the Sea Eagles $2.05. So they're not far behind, but at the end of the day, it should be a close game. But I think the Sea Eagles are good enough now to win games without Tommy being there, and tonight's an opportunity to prove it. Friday night, first game, 6 p.m, we've got the Warriors versus the Cowboys. Now that's at Moreton Daly Stadium in Redcliffe, which of course is home to the Warriors at the moment, with all this COVID, and we're still doing that going on. Look, the Warriors are, again, exactly the same odds as the Knights. They're $1.77 and the Cowboys are $2.05. But again, I've gone the Cowboys. I think, I don't know, just something says the Cowboys are going to get up. But, you know, the Warriors, they're just on and off, aren't they? They're hot and cold. You just never know who's turning up. But I've got the Cowboys tomorrow nonetheless. The second game, tomorrow, Friday night, game 1. Game 2, Friday night, it's the Broncos and the Roosters up in Brisbane, Suncorp Stadium. Roosters are morals, and I think with all the issues surrounding Payne Haas this week, look, again, you never know whether that's going to spur them on to greatness or upset the apple cart. But I just think the Roosters are going to be too good regardless of what the Broncos turn on. The Payne Haas thing, just on that, look, I think the whole thing's a storm in a teacup, I really do. Takes me back to the days of school where, you know, kids are treading on other kids' new shoes and all that. A kid did it to me once when I was in about year 11, I think. My brother bought me a pair of U-Butte Reeboks. Now, they're about $80-90 back in 1988. Fair whack of coin. Kid comes up, thought he was going to be funny, did the old tread on my shoes, and I basically throat punched him. Got in a bit of trouble, but it was worth it. Don't tread on people's shoes. Simple. Elvis sung the song. If you didn't get the memo, get it now. Albert Kelly, don't step on Payne Haas's shoes, mate. The guy's 6'100" and about 120 kilos. Don't do it. That's my advice. But anyway, that aside, I think it's a storm in a teacup, as I say, and we should move on. Getting into Saturday, the first game at 3 p.m, the Raiders versus the Storm down there in the nation's capital. Again, I think the Storm are morals. The Raiders, obviously, they've got a lot of injury problems, and I think they're gonna play a lot on pride and that sort of thing. And Ricky, I just don't think Ricky can get him up every week based on the green machine pride and the Viking clap and all that. And to be honest, I think Melbourne will just be too strong. I don't think it's going to be a drubbing like they gave the Bulldogs last week, but I certainly think that the Storm will be fairly convincing. 5:30 Saturday, Rabbitohs versus Dragons. The odds aren't too far apart here. $1.30 for the Rabbitohs, $3.50 for the Dragons. But it's at ANZ, or whatever they call it now, Stadium Australia, Homebush. I don't know. The Dragons were disappointing last week. I expected better from them against Parramatta, to be honest. I thought they were dismal. So mind you, take nothing away from the Eels. They were sensational. They were white hot. But you've got to go the Rabbitohs, obviously. Titans Eels, that one at Cbus Super Stadium, 7:30 Saturday night up here on the Goldie. Again, I think, look, it was a fairly tight one. They played each other in round 1. Or was it 2? It was one of those. You might remember that the Titans made a bit of a comeback, but the Eels got home in the end. And I think the Eels probably win it by a bit more this time. particularly on last week's form. They were just brilliant. Mitchell Moses, mate, playing out of his skin at the moment. And, of course, that Bryce Cartwright pass, one of the best tries I've ever seen in my 50 years. Just something so simple just got me very excited, I've got to say. Great try. Well done. So it's the Eels in that one. Then moving on to Sunday, we've got the Sharks and the Tigers. Sharks $1.10. Tigers $7. Can you imagine if this wasn't the Sharks, if this was Melbourne? They'd be Tigers would be out to like $10-11. I mean, I'm not a gambling man by any means. I don't really fully understand the odds, but I know a blowout when I see it. And $7 against the Sharks probably says a bit about where the Tigers are at the moment. Probably fairly accurate. I've taken the Sharks there, of course, and look, I as I said last week, I sincerely hope that Madge isn't a scapegoat for these performances from the Tigers. The players have got to be held accountable. Look, I know the coach has his level of accountability as well, but the reality is this club is a basket case, and I'm gonna nutshell it right now, as I have done a few times this week. This club has to forget the West Magpies and the Balmain Tiger element. It's been merged now. It's been a joint venture for over 20 years. It's time to move on. Forget about Balmain. Forget about the West Magpies. They were a wonderful part of rugby league history, but it's gone. It's been the West Tigers now for 20-odd years. There are people supporting the West Tigers now who are young adults. Some of them are adults. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. They've never known the Balmain Tigers or the West Magpies. They've only ever known this joint venture, the West Tigers. And yet what they don't understand is that in the boardroom, there are a couple of old fuddy-duddies still fluffing around and, who's better and who's more important. And, West Ashfield are buying out, Ryde Eastwood and all this sort of rubbish. They've got to get that sorted out. And if they can't put people in there who can leave nostalgia and sentiment behind and get on with running a bloody business, they need to piss them off. Simples. And get someone in, and it could be someone who has no background at all in rugby league, but they know how to run a business, and that's what they need to do. Second thing they need to do, and I know they've just spent a shit ton of money at Concord, but they need to relocate themselves out to Campbelltown, to the Macarthur region, where they've got the absolute Sydney heartland of rugby league. I'll go as far as to say that. The western suburbs, Penrith, Parramatta, big areas as well. But what Campbelltown has is massive. I mean, you've pretty much got yourself right up to Liverpool. And if they're smart, they could be bordering onto the Canterbury district. And then they've got the Southern Highlands. They've got obviously areas like Camden, Narellan, Thirlmere, all those areas, right? And then they go right down through the Southern Highlands. They can get down to Bowral and Robertson and these areas. And again, if they're smart, at the southern end of the scale, they're touching on the Southern Tablelands, Crookwell, Goulburn, places like this, and they're right on the border of Canberra territory. Not to mention they can go southeast, and they can dig into Wollongong, and I mean Campbelltown's 20 minutes from Ostomy. They've got so much surrounding them, but they need to relocate permanently to Campbelltown, where their greatest fan base is. And at the risk of upsetting a few people in the inner west, look, that's just, do you want a club to support or not? Because the one thing this mob don't want is to be the first joint venture to fall over. And it might not happen tomorrow, but if they don't get their shit squared away, it's going to happen sooner than later. So that's my recommendation with the West Tigers. I feel sorry for Madge, and I really sincerely hope that they can sort it out around him. I don't like his chances, though, because we know what they say. It's easier to sack one coach than 17 players. Anyway, moving along to my mob now. Another, bone of contention, if you like, for me is the non-selection of Kyle Flanagan. Of course, I've been very vocal about that over the last months. Again, I've made it clear I like Trent Barrett. I think he's a good bloke. He's a good human being. Nice guy, right? But I question his continual selection of Jake Averillo at halfback. Jake Averillo, again, never met the kid, but comes across as a really nice young fella and a really good footballer. But he's not a halfback shadow, right? We've established that. He's a centre in my books. And I'm not Wayne Bennett, Craig Bellamy, Trent Robinson, or any of these people. That's just my opinion. Barrett continued to pick him where he was. I think, as I suggested might be the case, Gus Gould has stepped in and said, nah, we need to change this. I'm not going to just stand by and watch this continuation go on where we just don't have the right bloke in the number 7 jersey. So they bring in Kyle Flanagan this week, and of course now there are people saying, well, they've thrown him under a bus because they bring him in and the first opportunity they give him is against last year's premiers who are on fire. They're undefeated. They're, what are they, $1.08 now? They've gone down 2 cents in the betting since last night. The Dogs are at $8. Forget the odds. Kyle Flanagan doesn't need to do anything on Sunday but go out there and steer the team around. It's all he needs to do. He doesn't need to go out there and try and be a superstar, and I'm sure he won't. But the reality is it's good to see the only actual genuine halfback at Belmore actually playing in that position. I wish him well. I don't expect him to be a world beater, as I say. I just expect him to go out there, steer the team around. And let's face it, if the Bulldogs are going to improve on last week, we just need some bugger to kick a field goal. 100% improvement on last week, right? But all jokes aside, look, the Dogs, I can't see them causing an upset, but by the same token, they might just put a little scare into the Panthers, even if it's only for a couple of minutes during the game. You can't help but think the Panthers might be a little bit complacent at some point, although I'm sure Ivan Cleary will be saying that's not what we want. But you just hope that the Dogs are going to give a little bit of a spirited performance. Well, I do. Again, so that's my tips. I'll go through them again very, very quickly. I've got the Knights over the Seagulls. I've got that margin. Sorry, I've got the Seagulls over the Knights. My bad. The Seagulls by 3. I've got the Cowboys to beat the Warriors. I've got the Roosters to beat the Broncos, the Storm to beat the Raiders, Rabbitohs to beat the Dragons, the Eels to beat the Titans, Sharks to beat the Tigers, and the Panthers to beat the Bulldogs. Again, this year I'm tipping with this one and not this one. 6 from 8 last week. It's the best I've done this year. Again, as I say every week, do not bet your firstborn, your mortgage, your car, anything of any value. Do not bet it on my tips. If you lose your house, it's your own fault. Anyway, look, let's hope for another great weekend of rugby league. Let's hope we're not talking about inconsistencies from the bunker and refereeing and stuff. They do need to sort that shit out, but let's hope we're not talking about it again this week. Let's hope we're just talking about some good footy. At the end of my my videos, and I don't do that many of them, but I always feel like I've got to say, do a Frank Hyde and punt high and follow on or something. So give me a down at the bottom. I've always wanted to do that. Click on the link below. Yeah, fucking wankers. Anyway, stick something in the comments section and give me a catch cry to end my videos on. Keep it clean. Keep it clean. Doodles.